Hello. Welcome back. Another episode of SEEK Bytes, a podcast for engineers by engineers, and really another AI. I feel like we're talking about AI a lot, but that really is the direction that just engineering is going.
I've been playing with OpenClaw a lot lately. It's exciting stuff. I've been spending a lot of time in AI land lately, looking at like how we can use agents to do complex tasks. I don't know if I talked about this on one of the previous recordings we did. One of the staff engineers in our team used Cursor to do what would be a multi-dev task, like an RTB task over multiple weeks or days, all on his own, just using agents. It was something like upgrading Automat or something. It was like upgrading a version of a dependency that we have, an internal tool, across 15 different repos or 15 different systems. And usually you would, scope that work, plan that work, put it into your RTB backlog, go through that whole process. Maybe you've got a dedicated RTB squad or just 10% of your team's RTB, whatever. Like, it would usually not be fast. It's very easy work, and it's repetitive work. It's the same stuff on each system over and over and over again. And these are the perfect things we can use agents for. And it didn't occur to me to do this. And then when I was chatting to him in a one-on-one, we were just talking about how we're both using agents and ideas that we've had. And what he did was he not only used an agent to do the coding changes, he used an agent with the Atlassian MCP. For anyone who doesn't know, MCP's Model Context Protocol. It's basically like REST APIs for AI. It's just an interface that an AI can interrogate to understand the capability of the API and then use it when it's doing stuff. So he was using the Atlassian MCP, which basically means your agent can do stuff in Atlassian, create Jira cards, create Confluence documents, read Confluence docs into its context, that kind of stuff. Used the MCP to create the cards, then used sub-agents to go through and process each card, create a PR for each card, and raise that PR for review. So automated the process from planning the task, doing the task, and then pushing the task up for approval.
That's very, very impressive.
15 systems. And what he did was, because we have a mono repo, so for us that's like not as hard as it is for other teams because we have a single repo, but he just went up a layer and said, the agent, go through SEEK's GitHub, pull every repo into this folder that is Talent Search owned, which is my team. So we had all of our code bases in one folder, and then at that level ran the agent. So not like inside each code base running the agent, at a higher level, just in the folder level saying all our repos are here, go through all of them, identify everything that needs this update, create a Jira ticket for all those things, then create sub-agents to process all those tickets and raise PRs for all of them. And it follows our PR template, so it looks like any other PR. It follows all of our coding standards because we have Cursor rules in the engine, in the code bases, so it's following our rules for how to write code and how to make change and stuff. Just automated the entire process. And that for me was like a big light bulb moment when I was like, damn, we really should be thinking about how to do agentic flows in our day-to-day work behavior. Like, we really should be thinking, how can I do this faster using agents?
Yeah, I had a similar thing recently where we periodically do tech health, like refreshes of our systems and stuff, to try and track like how's the system health looking. I could probably get an agent to write kind of a prompt file to be like, using all these different metrics, I want you to analyze the system. And it did do pretty damn well. And so it was able to kind of like highlight, it's like, yeah, I think it's, fully supported in this area, adequate in this area, unsupportable in this area. It actually did a really good job. And I was like, this has saved me so much time. Not quite to the scale of what you're talking about, Seamus, but definitely AI should be part of our operations.
I've been using it more, and I assume you're doing the same as well because we've talked about it, using it to review my code before I raise the PR.
Yeah.
So we have
absolutely.
skills. So we have skills that we have created at SEEK. It's like an internal toolkit, AI toolkit, has a bunch of skills in Cursor or other agent platforms. It's essentially like you can give it a prompt and it can look through its skills and see what it's got. It can look through MCPs and see what it has, but that requires more, like it's going to use tokens, right? It's going to have to try and do the thinking. So a skill is a way where you can just do / my skill and it'll go straight to that skill file and then essentially execute like what's in the file. It's just like, it looks like any other prompt. It's basically like a pre-crafted prompt. And you just go /skill and it'll use that prompt. I use the /PR review one on my own code for that same reason, because it picks up on things before I raise the PR that I've missed. And I'm finding that it's frequently picking up on things that are like quite valuable changes that we just don't think about. And this is coming from, like, I'm a lead engineer, you're a staff engineer. It's not like we're negligent or we're just not doing our due diligence. It's literally like when you have a computational brain that can process all of the information without any fatigue, without any the human brain has an average limitation of 5 items in working memory. So you can only hold 5 different concepts in your brain at any given time on average. Some people less, some people more. But they don't have that problem. Like they do have that problem. It's context, right? It's essentially the same thing, but their context is so much bigger than ours as human beings.
Some of them can go to like 2 million tokens for the context window, which is
context
staggering.
windows are getting huge. And
I find my brain has a lack of tokens. I think that's my problem.
Yep. Now that I'm starting to play with OpenClaw and like agentic things at home, my algorithms are now feeding. It's like I'm on the edge of you know what I mean? Like when people talk about being at the bleeding edge, when React was coming out, everyone's like learning React. You know when you're on the bleeding edge when every single day there's information coming out that's like contradicting the week before and, we were using MCP and RAG, but maybe MCP is dead. There's so many things that as we talk, they'll probably just pop into my brain, like MCP.
You've
MCP
just said
and
a
RAG.
few things there that I want to drill back into. So, firstly, you mentioned OpenClaw again, which I want to dig into. What's that? Secondly, you dug into bleeding edge, and thirdly, you mentioned MCP and how, like, on the bleeding edge, things are like in and out, in and out. But let's start with the first one, which is OpenClaw. What is OpenClaw for anyone who might not know what that is?
I don't know how they would describe it, but I would describe it as an agentic platform. It's an open source tool that you can install on your machine that makes it very easy to manage agents. It comes with a dashboard that you can use to install skills and do all that stuff from a UI. So it's basically, there are other tools that have existed. So I think it's worth mentioning a couple of other things. So there's Manus, MANUS, is one of the first consumer agentic AI services similar to OpenClaw. Perplexity.ai is another one similar to OpenClaw, but it's cloud hosted. So where the difference with OpenClaw is it runs on your local machine. So you can, if you have a big enough graphics card or you have a dedicated AI graphics card, you can, and I have ran local models to completely remove all cost.
I feel like I've used Perplexity. At least I had the app for a little bit, and it's kind of like another Google search was what I at least used it for. Maybe it's something else.
It might have changed over time. The way that it was described to me is similar to OpenClaw, but cloud hosted. That might not be 100% accurate. Like it might not be 80%, 90%. It might be like half of what OpenClaw does. I'm not sure. I'm not certain because I haven't played around with it myself. But essentially, there were these other services trying to do something similar. They might have been cloud hosted, not local hosted, not open source. And so OpenClaw came around, and it's essentially open source, locally hosted, agentic platform. So what that means in practice is I installed OpenClaw onto my local machine. It's pretty easy. There's like a curl command that you can run. And then once you get past that curl, it's all hands off like UI and just chat. So there's no more you don't have to do more commands through the interface and stuff like that. It does walk you, I should wind myself back. You run that curl command and then it essentially starts a TUI, a terminal UI, and then it walks you through how to set up the entire thing, including whether you're running a model locally or whether you're running it through an API key, whatever your preferred agent is that you want to use. And then the interesting thing, which is quite unique to that platform, it might not be unique now, but I think they might have been one of the first ones to do it, or the first ones to do it well, or at least the first ones to popularize it, is a gateway, an AI gateway. So what you do is I've essentially hooked up my local instance of OpenClaw running on my computer at home to my Discord server. So I can chat to my local LLM running on my computer at home through Discord or through Telegram or through WhatsApp or through whatever your chosen chat platform is. That's the really cool thing about it is you configure that gateway, you set it up with your server, you create a bot, you give that bot access to your server, and then you provide OpenClaw with your bot key, and now it is acting as that bot in your server.
So OpenClaw is a library that you're using?
It's a library that you install on your local machine. So in my terminal on my local machine, I do OpenClaw gateway, and it starts the OpenClaw gateway. And then in my terminal is the gateway talking to my model and responding to me.
So your terminal instance is running an OpenClaw, and that's exposing some ports or something to the internet. And then your Discord bot has a key, a private key presumably, that your local machine also has to kind of validate SSH traffic. And then it's just looking at that port response.
More or less, yeah. It's essentially, there's a heartbeat. So then now we're getting into the nitty gritty of how it works. And this is actually really important to talk about for anyone who wants to start using OpenClaw, because if you're using paid models and you go away for 12 hours and you leave your heartbeat on Opus, every heartbeat is just draining money out of your account. So it's good that you call that. So OpenClaw has this heartbeat concept where it's essentially doing a health check to see if it should be doing anything, to see if it's alive, make sure the agent's okay. I'm not certain exactly how the heartbeat plays into like checking Discord and stuff like that, but essentially most of what you said is my understanding of it. You have a key on your machine that you generate through the Discord developer or through Telegram developer or whatever developer platform for the chat platform you want to use for your agent. You get that key, you assign the bot to the server, and then you give the bot the key. And that's the same with your Anthropic key or your OpenAI key, whatever systems your tool is integrating with, you have to pay, or if it's free, you have to create a developer account, you have to get a key and then provide that key into your system. And there are unsafe ways to do that, and there are safe ways to do that. You can manually configure your OpenClaw yourself, just opening up the JSON file, changing, adding in your API key. But what most people are doing, and honestly what I've done as well, because I've created a Linux instance on my computer. So I've ran this in a VM, I ran this locally on my Windows machine, and now I'm running it on a Linux machine, like a dedicated slice of my hard drive. So I have to switch over to the other machine, and eventually I'll move that to an actual dedicated Linux box. The dashboard that you get with your OpenClaw agent is run on like localhost, like localhost 127.38 or something. It picks a weird, it's not 88, it picks a specific port, but you can configure that port. But yeah, it's the same as running any other website on your local dev machine and accessing that. And you can chat with the bot. You don't have to set up the gateway. Like the gateway will be there and the dashboard is running through the gateway. You don't have to configure the gateway to talk on Telegram. You can just use OpenClaw dashboard directly, and there's a chat interface as well as a bunch of tooling on the sidebar for like installing new skills, configuring security things, and all that sort of stuff. Which I've found is that like that's the starting point. Everyone who uses OpenClaw, their first point is going to be because it automatically loads the dashboard for you. So the first thing you're going to see outside of the terminal is going to be that UI. And then you just start chatting to it. And what I found crazy is I was expecting to have to do lots of manual configuration. And I was, as a dev, I was like, I'm going to configure the JSON configuration file and I'm going to do this. And I was doing everything manually. And as I watched tutorials, it became bleedingly obvious to me that the vast majority of people using this platform are not developers. And most of them don't touch code after that first curl command. And that's what I started doing. And it changed how I felt about what I was doing, because I was essentially talking to my bot and saying, hey, I want to create. So this is something that I've started playing around with, but I've seen lots of examples of it online, and I think this is how most people are using it. They're essentially creating AI companies on their machine. Their local model. So this is like the lowest cost way of doing it. It's not necessarily the most best quality way of doing it, because you have to have a really good machine to run a decent local model, and that's something I'll get into a bit, is like how you can reduce cost. But you essentially run a local model, or you have a cheap model like Haiku or something like that acting as your CEO, as your primary one. It's not doing the legwork. It's just initiating the legwork to happen. And people have created org structures that have like a CTO and a CEO and all that sort of stuff. But I think that that's just glorification of what's actually happening. Essentially, you have a primary agent that acts as your orchestrator that's as low cost as possible. Run that locally, or whatever low cost model you can run online like Haiku. And then you have Codex or Opus as your CTO, as your actual engineers doing the work. And you can have a cluster of agents that are your content creators, a cluster of agents that are your researchers, and a cluster of agents that are your developers. And you can have one or multiple agents that do research on the internet daily. Like it's automated. They're every day, 9 a.m. You set up a cron job, go research the internet, find the latest trends, finds what's going viral. And then you have your content creators who produce that content. And then you have your developers who maybe like build your website for people to come and chat to you. They do all of the tools that you're building. So people aren't just using it to build code. They're using it to build entire social media platforms for themselves and orchestrating it all through a single interface, through a single agent.
It's not that we have a single AI agent. There's N number of those agents working together, and then you have some centralized agent that is giving and receiving commands from all of those together, and then each of those could be customized with skills or whatever. So you're a senior engineer, your job is to produce and design, you need to review each other's work.
Yeah, we hear about like AI slop, and oh no, the sloponet is coming, and the slopocalypse, and these terms people are throwing around. That's true for people who aren't aware of what they're doing, and they're just throwing everything at the wall and trying to build whatever they can. They don't care how the code works. They just want to make the thing look and function how they want it to function. The code that I've been producing at home, I feel is quite good quality. And there's a lot of open source projects of people who are doing exactly what I'm describing, and you can look through their code and it doesn't look like slop code to me. However, the caveat is how the code looks doesn't reflect how it behaves.
I was going to say, you said you were experimenting with making a company or something like that. How did that go for you?
Like a multi-agent thing. It was
What did it do?
It was wildly trivial to set it up. I was just exploring, so I wasn't really doing. I didn't get to an output where I was like, "Yeah, this is it. I'm going to make money off this thing." But I wanted to sort of replicate what I was seeing people doing online, so that I could validate for myself, like, how good is this thing actually? And I was convinced. Like, I totally get why people are losing their mind over this. Why people have that entrepreneurial desire, but they don't have the skills. And now this is essentially a tool that allows them to bridge the gap that they couldn't before and get to the dream that they have of creating an app or whatever. I think everyone has I have very valid concerns that there's going to be a lot of people just pumping out borderline scam apps.
Yeah, that's kind of what, like when you said that, I was thinking, can you word that in a way that doesn't freak me the heck out? Like that sounds scary. Because
people are
so easy to do.
Now when I hear, who was it? Someone the other day, it was Andrew Yang was talking. I was watching a video from CNBC the other day. Andrew Yang was talking about, he referenced the CEO of Anthropic saying that 90% of code is going to be AI generated. And I think a lot of us like, no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. After spending a bit of time with OpenClaw and watching videos and seeing what the community is doing and how they're behaving with this, I get it now. 90% of code is going to be AI generated because we're going to have 90% more code.
Yeah.
It's not that the code we have now will be 90% generated. It's that we'll have 10x the code and 90% of it will be AI generated. And that is, I feel very confident that's the reality we are in right now.
Do you think that will be good code though?
Code that you can read, because from day one it was written by bots that are working on each other. And there's so many things to mention. The bots, you're running like 9 a.m.
What defines good?
Yeah, you're running like 9 a.m. cron jobs to go and do research, right? You're also running cron jobs for it to go over its chat history and look at the things that you said it did wrong or the agent orchestrator said it did wrong, and then improve itself by updating its own skills, updating its own rules. So you have like a fleet of agents that are recursively evaluating their failures of the day before and then updating themselves to do better each time.
Almost like a team of junior developers.
Almost like a team of junior developers doing skills crafting and yak shaving. Like that's what I'm saying is they're building these open source businesses that reflect the same practices that we do at work in terms of skill sharpening and yak shaving and those kinds of practices.
So it's kind of a scale thing. It's a single LLM is not going to replace an engineer, but when you can have an entire team of engineers, essentially.
Yep. Not just engineers, content creators, researchers.
So a team of agents working as all these different roles is what I should maybe say better.
Sounds like the FBI.
An agent organization.
So you can have an agent organization. It's like once you do that, you very much can act like the CEO and point in a direction and then look at the final output.
We talked about the other week, Maltbook, which was the social media for bots. Turns out it was just a bunch of people prompting the agents. People were just like overhyping what it actually was, and they were prompting the bots to chat. It wasn't just bots autonomously chatting like a social media for bots. That's not actually what happened under the hood.
So it was people saying, hey, I want you to go and chat with this other bot, or I want you to post stuff. And then people had prompted agents to respond to those prompts, or they were still manually, like, was there a person in the loop for those conversations?
My understanding is yes. It wasn't, so I don't know to the level humans were involved, but it was not an autonomous social media for bots. They were not acting and reacting autonomously, which to me, after my experience with OpenClaw, that would probably mean maybe an initial prompt, maybe some skills, maybe cron jobs. As in 9 a.m., check the social media, respond to things. 9 a.m., check the things. It wasn't waking up on its own, sitting there polling and checking and polling. Like it was essentially cron jobs with, humans were essentially telling it's the same way that we tell them to code.
Isn't that kind of autonomous? Like if, for argument's sake, if I set up a cron job to run at 9 a.m. every day, and then it says, look, go and look at my Facebook feed and add posts in response to whatever's been added in the last 24 hours. It's like, well, I mean, that is automated. Like it's set and forget.
The agents aren't independently deciding to register, post, comment, or upvote humans' direct every action. the agent interaction is human orchestrated via bots. So there's no true autonomy, but it was sold as being autonomous. It was sold as being like this totally autonomous agent social network, as in AGI, like the bots are waking up, they're developing personalities, they're having desires, they're going out and they're socially interacting because that's what humans do. Not true. It was humans creating cron jobs, creating these behaviors, telling them what to do.
I guess it's kind of the same way you were saying how with OpenClaw, which apparently, I don't know, just from the Wikipedia page, Moldbook's agents primarily run on OpenClaw.
Yeah.
If you're creating, you know, a AI company with a CEO and whatever stuff, you're still telling those agents what to do, and then they're going to do. So I guess it was a social media platform for that. You create a personality and tell it what to do.
100%. Personality is a really good keyword. People were creating bots with like an initial prompt of like, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to achieve? There is some human creating the bot, telling it what it thinks it should do and giving it its initial desires.
And what happens if the bot fails?
I would not be surprised if those kinds of things are automated, fixing those kinds of things. I've automated my agents fixing themselves. If they encounter problems, like on a daily basis, they run their 9 a.m. whatever, and they try to run a command or something, they encounter an issue, like it'll look for alternatives. It'll, like if it tries to do a curl and it can't do curl, it'll look for alternative commands that it can run. It'll look for multiple ways that it can achieve the outcome that you're trying to get it to do.
So you said
hold on, before we move on, Moldbook was also purchased by
Facebook,
Facebook.
Meta,
So I thought that was interesting. Speaking, like, if we're talking about how ways, you know,
you build something big,
OpenClaw.
open source, make no money, but then someone buys it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they want to make it proprietary, and that's the other way that you make money off these things.
one of the things you mentioned, you were running this OpenClaw agent, OpenClaw open source system, whatever it is, on your local machine. And you said to run some of these agents, so if you're running the agents locally, you need a pretty powerful machine to run multiple agents. And, you know, like two extremes. One is the low cost, like I have a $10,000 computer that can run this. And the other extreme is I'm running OpenClaw and I have like 200 million tokens worth of agents to run in the cloud.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there saying, like, you can totally remove 99% of the costs of OpenClaw by doing this, this, and that. And I've tried those things, and I can tell you, you have to spend thousands, like $5,000 minimum. That's not quite true. So it's a complicated thing to discuss because people would easily debate, oh, but I'm running this tiny model of Ollama and yada, yada, yada. What I did, I'll explain what I did and what my experience is, and then people can infer what they want from that. So I ran a bunch of local models. I ran Ollama. I can't remember exactly what the models that I was testing out. I was trying lots of different models. I tried dozens and dozens of models over a single weekend, trying to get something that was working. What I found, and this was a very hidden problem that I think is worth mentioning, if your model cannot return the exact JSON structure that OpenClaw requires, which is it's called a tooling call. If your model can't return the payload required for the tool call, it will never call the tool. So I was essentially just chatting to a bot in a chat window doing nothing with OpenClaw. It just wouldn't do anything. I kept saying, check the weather. What's the weather? /weather skill. And it just couldn't do it for me. And it took me hours and hours and hours to realize that my model was just too dumb. My model was too small. It couldn't rationalize returning the JSON payload required for OpenClaw to take over. It's essentially you have a model with a wrapper around it. The response from the model hits the wrapper, which is OpenClaw, and if it's in the correct JSON structure, OpenClaw does its thing. But that can't do its thing if your model is returning, you're absolutely right, XYZ, you're absolutely right, ZYX, so on and so forth. So what my experimentation was I tried running multiple models, and what I learned was that some of the best performing models, when you have hardware limitations, take a really big, really powerful model, and then you get a quantized version of it. So your model, let's say your model has 8-bit floats. So because a model is just a matrix of it's a heavily weighted graph of float values. When we talk about a quantized model, we're talking about taking a model that, let's say, had 16 bits per value in its model, and you take a quantized 8-bit version, you cut the bits in half, right? So you're getting less accuracy. But what we found is that quantizing a large model actually produces a better result. So I could have a 4-bit quantized, model from something massive, like the best models on the market that I can access, that's going to perform better than a full non-quantized model that was trained on less data, less compute. So one tip for people using OpenClaw, if you're trying to run it locally, get a GPU. You will never be able to run OpenClaw on a CPU. I've tried, it won't work. Running it in a virtual machine, most virtual machines, unless you pay a lot of money for enterprise ones, can't run GPU hardware acceleration into your VM, so VM's not going to work. A lot of people are running them on Mac Minis because the Mac Minis are now coming out with like 42 gig dedicated VRAM on them, literally designed for this. That's the way if you have the money, I'd recommend going that way, but don't be tricked into buying one that doesn't have the amount of VRAM you need. And I'm talking like, how much VRAM do I have? 32 gig VRAM or something like that. I think I have 32 gig VRAM, and I could barely squeeze in a decent enough model to get OpenClaw to trigger with a 5090 graphics card. So you are spending.
Wow. That's a fair whack of money. If you're saying a 5090, what's that? Like a $2,000 graphics card?
2,500 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
plus a Mac Mini as a separate purchase?
No, that's either or. So if you want to run a dedicated Linux machine and you build it yourself, you're going to need to get a 5090, or NVIDIA sell dedicated AI GPUs, which have way more VRAM, but you can't run them for gaming. So if you already have a 5090, cool. You can choose to game or run OpenClaw, but you can't do both.
So does that mean we're going to see all the data centers, and I say data center loosely, that were set up for Bitcoin mining instead for processing OpenAI models? And Bitcoin mining, a lot of electricity, not earning that much money now.
That's just so rude.
Model running.
They get in with the Bitcoin, make a bank off that, and now suddenly AI's now needs all the all that stuff, and they're already set up. It's just rude.
Well, this is what everyone's freaking out about. Is it's impractical, unpractical. It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
It's not a very good idea right now to build a gaming PC. RAM is through the roof, graphics cards are through the roof, because they're all getting slurped up by AI companies and by people like me buying them so that I can run this stuff at home. PewDiePie, I never thought that this would be like 2026 bingo card. PewDiePie is now one of the people I watch about AI to get AI news from. He, in his retirement, I don't know if for anyone who doesn't know this, PewDiePie was the #1 YouTuber, massive gaming YouTuber. He retired, moved to Japan with his wife and kid, and now he's exploring Arch Linux and AI. He created an AI council by building a supercomputer with like 12 5090s.
Holy moly.
He has a literal, like a Bitcoin mining rig, but it's for AI. And he has a council of agents on it that debate and deliberate about decisions and things, and then propose them to him. Like, we arbitrated over this decision and we believe that this is the correct path forward for you to do X, Y, Z. And he built and trained his own model locally, which is not what I did. I downloaded someone else's model and then just loaded it into my machine, running Olama.
Yeah, well, you have a full-time job.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's really interesting. He built a model locally, like trained a model. So not built and ran, but generated his own data, trained that model locally, and then ran the benchmarks, which Again, I could just talk about this forever. If you're looking at models to download for your OpenClaw, it's really important that you understand what benchmarks are, find the model that has passed the benchmarks to a satisfactory level for the things you want. So coding benchmarks, reasoning benchmarks, research benchmarks, content creation, whatever the thing is you want your model to do, make sure that it passes those benchmarks. And that's what I did, and I used all of my $5 of Anthropic credits just setting up OpenClaw, because I just said, let's just go Opus, let's let it work. And that was almost dangerous for me, because in those first 5 minutes, I got a glimpse of how powerful this thing is when you have the money to spend. And I've desperately been trying since then to get there without that cost, because there's no way I'm putting my machine on Opus and letting everything run on Opus, because you would just... Actually, I watched a video yesterday of a kid, an 18-year-old in America, who has 12 $200 monthly subscriptions to run his AI business at home.
Jeez, always.
Yeah. He doesn't know code, doesn't know GitHub.
$200
subscription, $2,400 US a month. 18-year-old just running an AI company.
And how much money is he making?
It was not mentioned how much money. And that's why I'm like, man, I think there's a lot of people out there pumping money into this on hopes and dreams that they're going to break out of the industry with some cool new apps that were totally AI built. And I don't think that that's happening, but caveat, I have seen examples of that happening on smaller scale. There is, I wish I had the link and I wish I wrote it down. I encourage people to do their own research. 100% do your own research. Everything, if you're going to touch OpenClaw, you're going to do any of this stuff, research a lot. There are so many pitfalls, so many traps, and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of content creators telling you almost true things that are very misleading about what this thing can do and how easy it is to set up and the costs. And then they've actually spent 15 grand setting up machines at home to run it. That's what they're not telling you. That kind of stuff. Yeah, so something that I want to like wind back on before we run out of time for the episode. We've been talking about OpenClaw to like run an organization, run a business for you. My experience after like 2 weekends of playing around with it till 1 a.m. is that it can do that. It's fairly easy to set it up. You don't have to be very technical. It's literally just a chat interface, and you just plenty of videos online of the prompts that you can provide, and it'll set up all the sub-agents and stuff like that. And when I talked really early about being on the bleeding edge and how I'm hyper aware that I'm looking at things that are just coming out, because this was 2 weeks ago that I was doing this research and playing around with OpenClaw, and now there's open source, like it's gone up to the next level. Now people are building open source services like Paperclip, which is on GitHub. You can look at Paperclip on GitHub, which essentially does what I'm describing out of the box. It's the extra layer that is the organization structure and the company of AI that you can run. So we're talking about OpenClaw, and some people might listen and be like, oh, I'm going to try and check that out. Things are moving so quickly. Tools are being replaced insanely fast. I'm hearing a lot. We talked about MCP before. I mentioned RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation. I hear people saying RAG is dead, MCP is dead. No, it isn't. For context, the context of your bot has a limited window, right? A certain amount of stuff. RAG essentially is going out to your database, grabbing some data, and then injecting it into your context. So you're putting a document from your database into the context directly. Context is getting so big now, you can just put everything into the context. You don't have to control what's getting put in there. You can just take your entire repository and put it into the context. I will say, for anyone who is hearing RAG is dead, don't look at RAG, MCP is dead, ignore that. RAG might be dead for low consumer usage. At enterprise levels, when you're dealing with terabytes or petabytes of data, RAG is still the way to go because you can't load petabytes of data into context. If I can give anyone one piece of advice who wants to open up OpenClaw or Paperclip or one of these other tools, do a lot of research. This, more than anything I've ever seen before, has the potential to very suddenly and very easily ruin you. Like, if you put the wrong personal data into it, it's very easy for that to get out there, especially if you just give it full, complete access to do whatever it wants. I could go make a skill and put it on ClawHub. So ClawHub is like NPM for OpenClaw. It's basically skills, packages, dependencies you can pull in. Your agent can automatically, you can let it just download skills. It just goes, I don't have a skill that does this. I'll go ClawHub, search, grabs a skill, installs it. I can put up a skill that just steals your crypto wallet off your machine.
Yeah, I was going to say, there must be
seen that happen
out there. Yeah.
ClawHub's actually added this automated security evaluation of all the skills, and it looks about 17% of all skills are malicious.
Oh, wow.
So an almost 1 in 5 chance that a skill you grab is going to steal data off your machine. So this is what I mean when I say do your research. I'm not just saying understand how it works. I'm saying don't just watch videos and do what people are doing. Maybe what we'll do is we'll leave the audience with some really key, poignant pieces of value around OpenClaw, since a lot of what we've been talking about is around OpenClaw. If you're going to experiment with OpenClaw, my top tips would be look at how you can run your setup with many narrow AI that are very targeted. So you can run Opus or Codex or something. Those are your engineers. They only spin up when you have an engineering task, and you have another agent do all the work to plan and figure out what the thing is you need to do before that agent picks up the task. And then you want to have one general AI as your chat interface, and you're acting as the CEO. So figure out how you can run the cheapest possible effective model on OpenClaw, whether that's local or just Haiku or whatever options you've got available to yourself. And then you want to run more complex, more expensive models as your individual workers doing the actual grunt work, which should be the minimum amount of the time, because the majority of your interface is going to go through that main generalized AI. With your agents, you want to limit to 7 to 10 skills. Don't dump every single skill you can. That's the very first mistake that I made. It's like context. The more things you give your agent, the worse it's going to get at doing its job. So be really targeted. If it's a research agent, give it research skills. If it's a coding agent, give it coding skills. Try to limit it to less than 10. 7 is the sweet spot that I've found.
All right, you've been listening to SEEK Bytes. We're going to go. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, Seamus. Thanks, Will. You're the best.